Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Liam and this is my PlayStation 5 Pro, which I've had for a week now. I did post my first ever YouTube last week, which was an unboxing and my first impressions of the PlayStation 5 Pro. So first of all, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody that watched last week's video. The amount of comments I got and views and subscribers from that video has just been overwhelming. When anyone puts their first YouTube video out, you don't expect it to do that well. You've got a lot of competition out there. There's lots of algorithms working against each other, but I am overwhelmed with the response that video's got, the comments, the suggestions, what you guys want to see. Thank you so much for tuning in. I do hope you enjoyed this video just as much as last week's video. So over the last week, I've had a chance to use the Pro more in depth. I've played a lot of games. I've tested out various performance mode and fidelity modes, and I just wanted to go over my findings that I've had this last week. I want to cover the positives and the negatives of the PlayStation 5 Pro, and I kind of want to evaluate my opinion at the end to see whether or not my opinions changed from last week. But before we get to that, so next Sunday, me and a friend of mine are off to Doncaster Gaming Market at the Doncaster Dome. This is an indoor market. They sell various gaming wares, consoles, retro games, clothing, etc. And I said to him, if we're going there, we've got to wear something that's gaming related. We went onto the interwebs and I came across insertclothing.com. So I sent them out a cheeky little email explaining that I've just launched a YouTube channel and I really like their stuff. I did not expect for 1 minute that they would get back to me. You know, I'm basically brand new in the world of YouTube, but they did. They emailed back, and not only did they email back, they said, this is exciting, we'd love to send you a couple of items from our range. And I was like, wow. So I got this hoodie, which I think we can all admit is pretty super cool. But not only that, they sent a couple of items that are inspired from The Last of Us. I'm a massive Last of Us fan, the game and the TV series. But they sent Ellie and Joel's utility jackets, which I'm trying to model here. And they also sent another jacket that Ellie wears. I'll pop that on screen there. That's my partner, Alexis. She's modeling it there. I just want to say a massive thank you to insertclothing.com. I really appreciate you sending these items over. Go check out their website. They have various different types of clothing. You can search via different games. You've got Final Fantasy, Doom, Crazy Taxi, all kinds of stuff on there. They do have a 70% off sale at the moment for Black Friday. Thank you guys, thank you so much. Anyway, back to today's video. So what did I say about the PlayStation 5 Pro last week? I'm a bit disappointed when game developers start to be able to use the Pro hardware and push it and develop with that in mind. I think there'll be a much bigger difference. I thought I'd be like really blown away by the image quality. I can see it, I recognise it. Can I £700 see it? In Horizon Dawn? No, not really. It's a bit of a stinger that you don't get the disc drive included. Been trying to find a disc drive for it for weeks, but they're out of stock. I didn't seem too impressed with that. So what are the positives I've come across this week using the PlayStation 5 Pro? The first thing that's impressed me is their AI upscaling technology, which is PSSR. This is quite similar to DLSS on NVIDIA cards on PC. It's a machine learning AI which takes a lower resolution image and boosts it up on a 4K display, for example. It does use hardware to achieve that. So generally the results are a lot better than a software-based solution in the way of like FSR2, FSR3, for example. So I've just recently completed The Last of Us Part 1 and I am playing The Last of Us Part 2, and I'm playing that game in their new PlayStation 5 Pro mode, which uses PSSR to upscale a 1440p image and present it on a 4K display. And it's a game that for the first time in years, I've been walking around and exploring every like nook and cranny. Nook and cranny? Nook and cranny? Is that the saying? Cranny? The more I say it, the more it doesn't sound like a word. There's a lot of instances in the game where you're not actually like doing anything other than just walking around exploring. And the amount of times I've kind of stopped in my tracks and just kind of looked around at the game world and been like, this looks beautiful. And with PSSR, it's almost like you're playing an interactive movie on this particular game. It looks fantastic. Now, you can still select from the original fidelity mode, which runs at 30 frames per second, or the original performance mode, which runs at 60 frames per second, but only runs at 1440p in a way of software upscaling. And even though the 4K mode looks sharper, it's too sharp. You're very much reminded to me that you're playing a video game, whereas if you use the new Pro mode, the edges look really smooth and there seems to be more detail being brought out of the image. Like when I kept flicking between the two, I much prefer the new Pro mode, which is powered by PSSR. Like the new Pro mode is still really sharp, it's just not over sharpened like the old fidelity mode. So in this particular game, PSSR is a big win. Like it's doing wonders here. It's a good example of how the tech should be used, which takes me on to the second game I've been playing this week, which is Horizon Zero Dawn. I did have a quick go of it and I said this. It's kind of
crazy because it's not blowing me away. I thought I'd be like really blown away by the difference in the image quality. I can see it. Can I £700 see it? In Horizon Dawn? No, not really.
So that's what I said last week, which was quite brutal if I'm honest. But after playing around with it for another week, I've kind of come to the conclusion that with this particular game, Sony does deliver on their promise from their initial reveal video, in that the Pro aims to deliver the graphics that you had at the fidelity mode previously, but run them at 60 frames per second. And with Horizon Zero Dawn, it's doing what it says on the tin. You're getting Performance Pro mode, which looks as good as the original fidelity mode, but the frame rate's doubled. And the more I played it this week and flicked back and forth between the two modes, the more I realised how much the Pro is actually doing. Because at first, when I first booted it up, I wasn't sure whether I'd booted up the original PlayStation 5 version or not, but upon going back and forth I realised I hadn't. But now that I've played it more, when I go back to the original performance mode, I can see the difference. There is a difference. In saying all that, Horizon Zero Dawn isn't actually using PSSR to achieve its upscaling. Guerrilla Games, who developed the game, they're actually using their own in-house solution, so it looks fantastic. And the best way to describe it, it's almost like a Pixar movie. You're controlling a Pixar movie because it's so smooth. It just looks like an animation. Oh, look who's come to say hello. Say hello, Blake. Mwah. So another game I've been playing this week, which is not really my cup of tea, is Demon Souls. Now, I'm not really a big fan of Souls-like games. I generally find them too difficult, and for me, video games are a way to relax and enjoy and get lost in a world. I don't really like playing games that involve dying a million times over and starting back from scratch. They're just not my cup of tea. I appreciate that people like them, but they're not for me. But I wanted to check out their new Performance Pro mode. This is another example of how PSSR is doing a really good job. So again, originally you had a 30 frames per second fidelity mode, and then you had a performance mode which ran at 60 and it ran at 1440p. Now with the Pro, you get a new Pro Performance mode, which basically runs at 60 frames per second, but keeps all the graphical niceties of the fidelity mode and upscales it to 4K, and it looks absolutely fantastic. Again, it's not really my cup of tea, but I can appreciate the visual quality of the game. So that's another example of the PSSR basically doing what it's supposed to be doing. When you play a game at 60 frames per second, after about 20-30 minutes, when you go back to 30, you really appreciate the increase in fluidity. Me personally, I can get used to 30 frames per second again. However, for games that require like shooting or a bit of accuracy, I do struggle to play 30 frames per second games. But if it's a story-driven game, something like Final Fantasy, or a game that has like an auto lock-on function, I can still play 30 frames per second, but I've got to adjust to it again. So another thing I do like about the Pro is it comes with a 2TB internal storage. Now, I didn't mention this last week, I did forget. I was so excited to get into it, I forgot about loads of stuff. Now, with the original PlayStation 5, you only had 825GB of usable memory. So with the Pro, this is doubled and then some. And what I've done is I've actually moved across my 1TB NVMe drive I had in the normal PlayStation 5 and popped it into the Pro. So I now have almost 3GB of usable memory. So that's another great feature that the Pro has, albeit an expensive one. Now, the great thing about the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 5 Pro, you can also use USB external hard drives. However, these tend to be slower, and although you can store games on them, you can't actually play native PlayStation 5 games from them. You have to move them back to the internal storage. On the other hand, PlayStation 4 games, you can store and play them from external drives. You're being super cute today. Another thing I really like about the Pro is the looks. It is super slim. Now, I know I don't have the disk drive attached. They are still super out of stock in the UK at the moment. I've signed up to about 10 websites to notify me when they come back in, so I'm still waiting. But I do love the look. It is a lot slimmer, and I can hold it with one hand, whereas I can't hold the original PlayStation 5 one hand because it weighs a ton. I love the fins on the side. At first I was a bit unsure about them, but I do think they make the Pro much more distinctive. You're not going to get confused, you know, what version of the PlayStation 5 this is. One thing I do like about the PlayStations is the LED at the front. So when you first turn the PlayStation on, it glows blue, but then ultimately once it's booted up to the main menu, it settles down on white, and I just kind of wish it'd stay blue. That's not a positive or a negative, it's just kind of in the middle. Like, you immediately think of blue when you think of PlayStation. Red you think of Nintendo, and green you think of Xbox, and I kind of wish the blue would stay, or maybe it'd be the opposite way around. You turn it on and it glows white and then settles down to blue. I do like the stand on the Pro as well, but you do have to buy this separately. This isn't an official stand though. I bought this off Amazon for £15, but I don't think you can tell. With my original PlayStation 5, you might have seen that it's actually black. Now I sprayed those plates myself, and I've been thinking of doing the same with the Pro. Now the PlayStation 5 Pro doesn't actually have any plates that are on sale right now. Sony's not announced them yet. And I was thinking, should I spray this black? Let me know in the comments. Or should I spray it a different colour? Should I leave it white? Or should I just wait until Sony release the plates themselves? But I am really tempted, just because I want it to kind of match the PlayStation 5 over there. The PlayStation Slim plates, the bottom half do fit, but unfortunately the top half don't fit due to them being slightly different size, which is kind of annoying. Another thing I love about the Pro, and this isn't really specific to the Pro, it's just specific to consoles in general, it just works. Now, being a PC gamer, not everything always just works. Sometimes you've got issues with drivers, you've got graphical issues on games, sometimes games just won't work and you've got to figure out why, you've got to diagnose the problem. The amount of times me and a friend have said, should we go and play some Call of Duty, only to be hit with issues. With a console, you come home, you grab your controller, you sit down and you just play and you just get lost in your games straight away. Generally, there is no messing about with graphical settings. I do appreciate that some games, especially on the Pro, they have performance modes. Most people you just sit down, you turn it on and it just works, and that's great. That's because it's a closed platform. When I'm playing a story game, I just want to get straight into the game. I don't want to be messing about with stuff. So that's another thing that I do like about the Pro, but also consoles in general. Right, so now we've gone over the positives that I've come across this week. I want to cover some of the negatives. Now, PSSR was in the positive section, but it's also in the negative section. Let me explain. So PSSR is an upscaling technology, as we've mentioned, but it can only work its magic when it's fed a resolution that's quite high to begin with, and it can really make things look good on a 4K screen. However, with a couple of examples, which I'm going to talk about now, it doesn't look that great. So the first example is Alan Wake 2. Now I downloaded this because there's a trial at the moment on PlayStation Plus, and I thought I wanted to check out its new Pro modes. So the first mode I checked out was quality mode. Now to me, when I first booted this up, this did look quite nice, and now they've added in ray tracing reflections onto the quality mode, whereas they were absent on the original PlayStation 5 quality mode. You know what, on a 4K screen, sat as close as I do, I thought this looks nice. However, 30 frames per second, it's a shooting kind of game. For me, it's unplayable like that. Anyway, I switched over to the performance mode. As soon as I started playing it, I was like, okay, it's running at 60 frames per second. It looks relatively nice. Obviously a lot less sharper than the 4K mode, but it's playable like this. When I got to the forest section as Saga, the detective, you start running around there and I instantly noticed the frames dropping. I was like, oh, this is strange, because I don't remember them dropping as much when I've played it previously on the PlayStation 5. The guys over at Digital Foundry, when they did a performance review of Alan Wake 2 PS5 versus the Pro version, they actually found that the average frame rate on the Performance Pro mode does actually run worse than the PlayStation 5 mode. And not only that, the image quality isn't that great. There's a lot of shimmering in the picture. I wasn't really shocked at this because it kind of mimicked what I'd found on there. The frame rate seems to even drop below the VRR window on the Pro. So even if you've got a VRR capable display, you will still see stuttering. Now, the forest area in Alan Wake 2 is arguably the most intense area of the game, so after this point you probably aren't going to see those drops as much, but they're still there, and it's a bit worrying that a Pro version of the game is running worse than a PlayStation 5 version of the game. The whole point of the Pro, when Sony did the initial presentation of the Pro, they said you're going to be able to play your games at fidelity mode graphics, but at 60 frames per second. Now, ultimately, it is up to the developers of the games to utilize the features of the Pro. If games don't receive patches and they already are at a locked 30 frames per second, the Pro's not going to change that. The Pro's not going to do anything on its own. The developers have to implement patches. On the other hand, games that have a dynamic resolution and maybe run at less than 60 frames per second, the increased GPU power on the Pro is going to push them up slightly. But again, to get the most out of the Pro, the developers do need to utilise the features, which in Alan Wake 2's Performance Pro mode, I don't think it's quite there yet. Like for me, at the very minimum, the Pro needs to outperform the PlayStation 5. It's £700. Even if the game looks better but performs worse, To me, that doesn't make any sense. It should be performance first. That should be the selling point of the Pro. You can get a higher performance. Like with Alan Wake 2, Jedi Survivor, PSSR doesn't look that great. There seems to be some graphical issues on there, and the guys over at Digital Foundry recently did a video comparing Jedi Survivor on the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 5 Pro, and they came to the conclusion that PSSR just isn't doing that great a job on this game. There's a lot of flickering in the graphics, the shadows seem to be flickering, the grass, the foliage.
In the performance mode. And image quality, unfortunately, it's really not good with PSSR in this title. If you look at this side by side, for instance, you can see just how unstable the game appears now with PSSR in the performance mode. I would personally go as far as to say it looks dramatically worse than the old performance mode here.
So again, PSSR doesn't seem to be doing a really good job here. Simply turning on PSSR in itself, I don't think it's going to work wonders on its own. It needs to be implemented properly. With Jedi Survivor, it's just not there yet. I wouldn't buy this. I wouldn't play this game on the Pro right now. Another thing that's annoying about the PlayStation 5 Pro is in way of the Pro Enhanced games. So for me, when I'm on the PlayStation Store, I've got a Pro, it should be bam, first and center. Here's your games that are Pro enabled. Here's the graphical changes that those games have, but that's not the case. There is a tab on the PlayStation Store which shows the Pro Enhanced games, but you have to go find it. It's not there on the homepage. And even when you do find the games that are Pro Enhanced, you don't know which games are enhanced until you actually click on them. And even then, it doesn't detail what it is that you get in the enhancements. Whereas on the Xbox, the images themselves do have like a Series X and Series S label, so you know straight away whether they're enhanced or not. So now I've spent a week with the Pro, what do I think about it now? Do I feel like £700 well spent? I've got a little bit more time for the Pro now because I've had more time with it and I've seen what it can do. So with games like Ratchet & Clank, The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2, I even played Hogwarts Legacy briefly. These examples show off what the Pro can do in terms of image quality. It can be fantastic. On the other hand, if the developers don't utilise its features properly, it can just look roughly the same, if not worse in some rare cases. And for me, again, like I said last week, the Pro's not for everybody. It is an enthusiastic machine. It's a machine for somebody who maybe has a little bit of money to burn. It's a machine for someone who maybe trades in their PlayStation 5 and the jump up to £700 isn't that big. It's for someone who wants the best examples of the games that are out this generation on a big TV. If you are a casual gamer, if you sit 10 feet away on the sofa, if you don't mind playing games at 30 frames per second, then the Pro's not aimed at you. It's not for you. I am looking forward to seeing where the Pro goes this mid-generation. I think there's a lot of untapped potential in there, but the developers really do need to put the effort in order to show that. But yeah, sorry guys if you wanted a big revelation. After a week, I'd say I feel a little bit more positive about it now. That's just because of my use case scenario, because of what I'm using it for. My aim of this channel is it's going to be gaming and kind of tech themed. I'm going to be doing some more Pro coverage, maybe in way of comparing different games on the normal PlayStation 5 versus the PlayStation 5 Pro. A lot of you did message me to say I'd love to see you doing some game streaming, so I've got that on the cards as well. I have ordered a capture card so that I can get my own footage when I'm playing these games. Again, thank you so much for watching last week's video. Thank you if you've stayed this far on this video. Thank you so much for watching on here as well. I really appreciate it. If you do enjoy these kind of videos, please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. It really does help and I really do appreciate it. So that's everything from me for now. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Oh, come say bye, Biggie. Bye.